Call of Duty World at War. No, that's wrong. Call of Duty World War II, objectively, isn't a bad game, but in my opinion, it's gotta be the worst Call of Duty we've had in years. And unfortunately, it really sucks to say that because I can tell the effort that went into this game. The graphics are really nice. I mean, it plays decently well, as in gunplay on multiplayer, that is. And I mean, it seems like they genuinely put some effort into the zombies mode. But unfortunately, I absolutely hated it. And I'm gonna give you my thoughts and opinions on World War II today. My first and last Call of Duty World War II video. I originally intended this video to be more of a formal review, but as I thought about it, I thought this video should be as informal as my opinions on the video. And trust me, this video is gonna get a little colorful. So let's just jump into it, starting with the first thing I played in World War II, the campaign. Naturally, being one of the first World War II campaigns for Call of Duty in years, I was pretty excited to try it out. I was really excited to see Sledgehammer's take on a World War II setting for such a long time. And, well, we finally got it, and it was something. The campaign felt more of a action piece than anything. Was it really a World War II setting? Well, it looked like World War II. Did it feel like I was in World War II? No. It felt like I was a super soldier. And they were trying to combat this, obviously. The past few Call of Duty campaigns were literally about being super soldiers, something that we've wanted to get away from for a long time. I mean, this whole game's marketing campaign was going back to their roots, so part of that was adding health packs to the campaign. And it didn't help. I still felt like I could take on a mass amount of enemies, no problem. And I played the game on hardened. So, what was the point? The game wasn't hard enough, and they were obviously appealing to some sort of casual audience. But why? And you can really tell they were appealing to a casual audience that obviously can't get offended. Because, I mean, the amount of gore in this campaign is little to none. The amount of historical accuracy is little to none. Yes, the battles are historically accurate. However, what actually happens doesn't feel right. Everything that happens in the campaign is completely overshadowed by a few things. It's about how they handled their rough topics. World War II was not a pretty time. It's not a time that should be glorified. However, this campaign, when you walk away from it, it feels as though everything just worked out fine. It's almost like a war didn't even happen. I mean, spoiler alert if you haven't played the game already, but you walk away completely unscathed. And your best friend, who got captured by the Germans and sent to a concentration camp, got rescued and saved in the end. I just don't understand this ending. It's completely inaccurate and holds absolutely no weight. It just completely destroys the story. Another topic they absolutely butchered was racism. Now, racism isn't something we all want to talk about, but it's absolutely a big part of World War II, and something that our brothers in arms had to get over to fight together and learn how to appreciate each other's lives. And World War II tried to tackle it. In one of the missions, you work with a black man, and in the end, everything's fine. There's absolutely zero character development. At the beginning of the mission, one of the characters offhandedly said, "I don't trust the black guy," and at the end, he says, "I trust you now." This just isn't how the world works. You see, the way I would fix this is just by having the black man in their squadron from the beginning. That way there would be able to be character development made throughout the entire campaign, and we'd actually be able to see change in our characters and acceptance of all different races and cultures. However, Sledgehammer Games came very, very short on this topic. On the topic of actual campaign gameplay, it's pretty solid for the most part. But again, you do feel like just a complete super soldier. However, there are some cool set pieces. Except for one. Like, seriously, what the fuck was that? And my last point on the campaign is that it just didn't feel open enough. And a lot of Call of Duty campaigns fall victim to this, but going back to the roots and going back to World War II, I was really hoping Sledgehammer Games were going to hit this out of the park. And I mean, I just want another Call of Duty campaign that's like Call of Duty World at War, Call of Duty 2, those type of games where it just feels really open, like the player has a choice in what they do. I feel like Black Ops 3, I know, Black Ops 3 of all campaigns, actually did a pretty decent job of this, and I thought for a World War II game, Sledgehammer would get this right. But they did not. So finally, the campaign isn't horrible. It's not a complete disgrace like some Call of Duty campaigns. It's definitely not great though. Completely misses the mark on some of its messages and absolutely obliterates some of the gameplay that just makes you feel like you're not even in World War II. But anyways, that's going to wrap up my opinions on the campaign. Now, it's on to the zombies. Honestly, after playing the Final Reich, I thought this was going to be an incredible year for zombies. And just to briefly touch on this first map, it was honestly so much fun. Like, I got into the game once the servers worked, we'll get into that later, but once I got into the game, I was just having a blast. I figured out the pack punch on my first go round, figured out how to get the Tesla gun on my first go round, and that's completely due to the notebook. The notebook is a wonderful feature, and I mean, it's hard to get me invested into your zombies mode, right? Like, I'm willing to look up whatever I need for Treyarch mode. I will look up the most convoluted of Easter eggs just to figure out how to get the spork on Mob of the Dead. However, if you want to hook me into a zombies game, World War II just did it perfectly. It showed me how to do things, but I also felt like I was completing the puzzles myself at the same time. And that's what made it just so intriguing and so much fun. It kind of guided me on how to do everything, but at the same time, I was the one doing it. I didn't feel like I was having my hand held. I still felt like I was rewarded, and I felt like I was progressing. And getting to that boss fight for the first time by myself was just so rewarding. Beating it was so damn cool, and the Final Reich was just a solid experience. But in terms of replayability goes, it's not all there. Unfortunately, the Final Reich doesn't have that many side Easter eggs to accomplish, and I mean, once you do the main Easter egg and the hardcore Easter egg if you're into that, there's not much left to do, and that's why the Final Reich, after a few times played through, is just really boring. But I thought, since they nailed the Final Reich in terms of atmosphere and gameplay, if they just added some more replayability factors to the Darkest Shore, then it would be a wonderful map. Instead, we got this.
What happens when fog rolls in? You can't see them until they're 5 feet away from you.
Whoever thought fog was a good idea in the Darkest Shore is so stupid. Literally, the only thing that can completely ruin a zombies map, like, and I mean completely ruin, is if you can't see the map around you, you can't see where you're going, or if you can't see the zombies. Literally, I don't even want to talk about it. But really, other than the fog, the Darkest Shore suffers again from having no side Easter eggs, and being a small map, and having a pretty boring main quest, although the main quest is intuitive, fun to solve for the casual player, so I'll give it that. I enjoyed myself with the Darkest Shore, but definitely not nearly as much as the Final Reich, because there's no notebook in the Darkest Shore. Their decision to remove the notebook is such a baffling one to me. It was the one feature that I completely praised World War II for, and I thought it was an amazing feature for casual and hardcore players. It made everybody want to get involved and solve the puzzles. But it turns out that Sledgehammer had a different direction for World War II Zombies for the rest of the season. For DLC 2, The Shadowed Throne, I thought it was a very good map, to be honest, although it completely copied Gorod Krovi's layout. Like, I mean, This isn't a stretch. This map and Gorod Krovi have the exact same map layout. Like, almost to a T, which is very disappointing. But the introduction of new fun melee weapons is pretty cool. The main quest is, again, pretty fun, something that World War II does pretty well throughout the season. The cool side Easter eggs are awesome and a very well needed feature for World War II zombies. Adds a lot to the replayability of the map. There's features like playing Hangman to get secret wonder weapons. Very cool. So overall, the Shadowed Throne was actually pretty good. But then we get into DLC 3, The Tortured Path. Literally the most rushed and completely just awful DLC map, in quotations, that, I mean, has ever been released for Call of Duty. So The Tortured Path tries to do something new with zombies. It takes everyone's favorite feature from Exo Zombies. Yeah, you remember those? The objectives from Exo Zombies. Specifically, the Burger Town Escorts. Yep, they're back in The Tortured Path. You see, The Tortured Path is split into 3 parts. 3 different small, very small maps. And you play through them, and you only played around 10. And on each round, there's a different objective. And these objectives are unbalanced and almost impossible for solo players to complete. And at the end of each map, you have to fight a boss, which is unbalanced for solo players. And beyond that, the Easter egg is spread across all 3 maps. So if you want to unlock these maps to just play without these objectives and go, I don't know, further than round 10, you have to complete the Easter egg on all 3 maps in a public playlist. Not in a private one, a public one. Granted, I believe this is fixed at this point, but the point is that it was like this to begin with. Sledgehammer, how silly are you? Which finally brings us to DLC 4. The Shadowed... No. The Darkest... No, that's not it either. The Frozen Dawn. Alright, the Frozen Dawn was actually pretty fun, for the most part. In the beginning, I actually had a lot of fun with it. Didn't look up anything for the map and figured out a lot of it on my own. It had this kind of Final Reich feel, you know? You just go around, pick some things up, put some things down, and you can kind of figure out everything on your own. Which I enjoyed. But after a while, the map gets incredibly boring as it's very small for a DLC 4 map. Has a very similar tone to the final map on The Tortured Path, which makes it just almost boring. It's kind of like a reused map, even though more likely the map in The Tortured Path was reused from DLC 4, but I digress. This map brings back the cool melee weapons from the Shadowed Throne, which I enjoy. Obviously they're new, very powerful, upgradable, and just a lot of fun. However, this map's tight corridors and just small layout makes it so you get a lot of unwanted hits, a lot of unwanted downs, and a lot of unwanted times where you lose your Juggernog, which just isn't good gameplay. It's not fun to just get hit constantly out of your control. Just, the map has so many tight corridors, but the problem is there's no open places to make it feel balanced. Like, I think Shangri-La is a good example of this. The map's basically all tight corridors, but there's a few places that are just a bit wider for the player to get around. And it almost always feels like you're on edge, but you're not just dying for no apparent reason. Whereas this map kind of goes for that, but it's the other way around. You're dying for no apparent reason. And the only problem with World War II is that you constantly have to be rebuying your jug once you lose it. So it just makes it for like a lot of unwanted points spent, and it just gets really annoying and really, really repetitive, as the only train you can run is in spawn, or just by running around the map constantly. So overall, I didn't hate World War II Zombies, but I didn't love it. There were just so many times where I just thought, why is this a thing? Why are they doing this? And a lot of it didn't make sense to me. Some of the maps were good, some of the maps were really bad, but it was just a complete mixed bag for me. And the absolute biggest thing that World War II Zombies messed up was its replayability. After I played the map for the first few times after it came out, I felt literally zero reason to go back and play it. I played the final rank the other day for the first time in about a year, because I had zero reason to play it. That's a big problem. With Treyarch Zombies, there's so many different ways to play, so many different ways to set it up, and with Black Ops 4, they're even expanding on that further with custom mutations and calling. But anyways, now it's time to get on to the multiplayer. In my opinion, the weakest part of this game. Where do we start with the multiplayer? I suppose we'll start at the beginning, when the game released. The game didn't work. If you're living under a rock, the only thing that people talked about World War II when it came out was that its servers came from its time period. Yeah, that's how bad it was. The game literally wouldn't work on release, which left us to not even be able to experience the multiplayer until a day or so later. And, well, it turns out the beta wasn't a beta. You see, the beta was actually the full game with a beta tag on it. That's right. When we got this game, it was still in beta, basically. There's nothing changed from beta till full release. We only had 9 total multiplayer maps, and terrible multiplayer maps at that. The only ones that were slightly even playable, and I mean they had a decent 3-lane design, like a Treyarch type of map, they were so boring, absolutely no inspiration, and just completely bland of anything. They're not fun to play on, there's stupid choke points, and you're constantly getting flanked from everywhere. And if you heard me, I said those were the good maps. The bad maps play like ant farms. Obviously the worst offender of this would be Point to Hawk, an absolutely terrible, awful, no good Call of Duty map. What made you think, Sledgehammer, okay? What made you think that having a circle for a Call of Duty map, a circle with a bunch of lanes all leading to the middle, was a good idea? No, that means you're getting flanked constantly, you're getting shot constantly from people you can't see. And this is the problem with all of World War II's maps. They lack color, they lack interesting design, and they lack actual flow. The new division system, which is the create a class system basically, is absolutely atrocious. You see, it's just the create a class system, but it restricts your creativity. Do you know why the create a class system was originally introduced into Call of Duty? So that you could customize your classes in a way that suited your playstyle. However, World War II restricts this, making you choose a division, meaning you have to basically stick to a certain weapon type to gain all your benefits. And if you used a different weapon within that division, you'd be at a disadvantage. Furthermore, with this division system, you can only choose one perk per class. Granted, these perks do offer multiple benefits, but you have to scroll through about 20 different perks to understand each one. Do you think I can remember 20 separate perks and all of their benefits? No. So, in combination with only being able to run one of these, you usually find your favorite and stick with it. And the one that obviously gave you the most benefits, in my opinion, was the quick reload perk. It was the only one that I ran throughout the entire game. How is this customization? You're limiting the player to being able to use only one type of perk. And that leads me to some of my multiplayer nitpicks. Alright? And this has to do with the main menu. I know, you guys are gonna be like, what is he talking about? Who cares about the main menu? Alright, I do. I care about a proper user interface that actually allows people to see what the hell they're doing. Alright, and a user interface should be designed for a homeless person. Someone who's never played a video game before can pick it up and know exactly how to start a match. I still have a hard time creating my classes, changing my settings, changing my customization, and finding a match. I still have a problem with this. I've been playing this game for a year, and I still have a problem using its most basic functions. How is it possible that you design a UI so poorly that I, somebody who's been playing Call of Duty for years, can't even use it after a year? Back to actual gameplay, this brings me to the headquarters. The headquarters is completely pointless in my opinion. After the game launched, nobody used it. In fact, nobody could use it when the game launched. It was completely broken for a month or two. Finally, when they fixed it, people had lost interest, including myself. And to this day, I don't want to use the headquarters. I want to get in and play the game. I feel no reason to go to the headquarters whatsoever. The only reason to go there is to collect your mail, to visit the quartermaster, and to visit the challenge guy, or to 1v1 your friends or play some other silly games. However, they added all these features to the main menu now, so you don't even need to access the headquarters whatsoever to do these basic functions. So what's the point? Why would I go into the headquarters when the actual fun of the game is playing? It's completely flawed in my opinion, and it was part of the reason why the game was so broken. If the headquarters wasn't even in it, which it didn't have to be at all, I don't think the game needed it whatsoever, but if the headquarters wasn't in the game to begin with, the launch would have been much smoother, and I think this game would have left a much better taste in all of our mouths, and we might have even enjoyed it in the long run more if the launch was better. The DLC season for World War II's multiplayer was pretty bad as well. And it's saying something when my favorite DLC map out of all of them was the remake from WW2. That's tragic. The only DLC map I enjoyed was the remake. You know, it's funny. World War II's entire marketing was that it's back to its roots, boots on the ground. But when they said the game was going back to its roots, I didn't think it was removing what was good in recent Call of Duties. You know, this game just feels colorless, bland, and uninspired, and it's ultimately what led me to just not want to play this game in the end. In conclusion, I'm not a fan of World War II, if you couldn't tell already. This Call of Duty game, though incredibly hyped, just felt completely short for me. Because of all the reasons I explained in this video, from the campaign, to the zombies, to the multiplayer, none of it captivated me, like Call of Duty usually does. Anyways, I want to take this last part of the video to just talk about something that triggers me with World War II, alright? It didn't really fit into any of my other segments, so I'm just gonna put it here. I really dislike the music. I mean, the composition of the actual music is wonderful. I mean, you can hear in the background. The actual playing is beautiful. However, their use of soundtrack was awful throughout the entire game. It sounds the same. Every soundtrack in this game sounds the exact same. It gets boring, it gets mundane, and frankly, it gets annoying, alright? There hasn't been a single Call of Duty where I felt the need to turn off the music in the sound settings. I did that with World War II. I shut off the music because it pisses me off that much. And it's just something that Treyarch never gets wrong. They're just so good with soundtracks, and I think I'm just spoiled by them at this point. That World War II soundtrack was just not good for me. They just took the same sample and the same type of song and reused it throughout every aspect of the game. You know, create an intense version, create a slow version, create a sad version. And it just pissed me off. It's something we always joke about as friends all the time. Caliber, Riley and I, Mateo and I. We all just joke around that this fucking soundtrack is horrible. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video. This is my final World War II video. And my first. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you have, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and if you want to see more Call of Duty content from me, well, stick around because Black Ops 4 is just a week away. I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.